When I think about Chesley, I most remember our goofiness together, how many times we laughed together. We loved so many of the same things. When she was a child, one of my favorite movies still of all times is West Side Story. And so when Chesley was a child, we would belt out all the songs and we would do the dances and I would twirl her up on my shoulder. And we just carried that right into adulthood. Those happy, fun, giddy times that we shared together were just incredible. And her light was always so absolutely bright. Even as a child, she was brilliantly smart, but very affectionate. And I saw her just carry that with her all the way into adulthood. And I think it translated in the kindness and the magical energy that people felt when they were around her. When Chesley was a little girl, she was very quiet, actually, and so you could tell she was processing things. So when she started school, even though she was wicked smart, her teachers didn't sense that. As a matter of fact, she shared once famously that she almost failed kindergarten, not because she wasn't smart enough, but because she wasn't engaging in class. And so for her, that silence was just an ounce of protection. And as she got older, while teachers and other people in administrative positions would applaud her for her intelligence, her intellect, her drive, her peers, either because she didn't look like them, or because she wasn't interested in the same things they were, or because she seemed like teacher's pet, began to tease her. And even as she got older, she said that when she looked at herself, she still saw that nerdy kid with the unibrow. And I think in her mind's eye, that's just who she always was. I did not grow up in pageants. I did not compete in my first pageant until I was a married woman, and did so because the prize package, quite frankly, seemed like something I wanted. And I was not shy and thought, okay, I'll give it a try, and was shocked when I won, honestly. And what I saw in pageantry as a person who was an entrepreneur at the time was a chance to really stand in front of rooms and build a network professionally so that I could talk about what I did as my day job. What Chesley saw was a woman who was being heard. And she kind of carried that when I stood in rooms, people listened. And I think for her, that's what she wanted, was to be heard and not viewed as that nerdy girl. And while the public tends to see only the finals night of women coming out and in an evening gown and a swimsuit and answering a question with 30 seconds, all the preparation that goes into every woman who is preparing for that moment lasts with you and does build skills and community. And that's the part that Chesley clung to. There are many women who, when competing in pageants, are doing so to highlight a cause or for scholarship money or to build those interview skills. And you walk away from a pageant, a well-run pageant, with a plethora of skills that you may not have had when you first entered. And so it is no surprise that as she continued on in pageants, that's how she identified the women who were there, not just by their physical beauty, their intelligence, but women who were promoting a cause and highlighting something that they were passionate about. The question of whether pageants helped or hurt her or impacted or influenced her mental illness, I think Chesley spoke about that. And so I'm going to pull from what she said, both not, just in the book, but in conversations that she and I shared. Pageantry has its own kind of following, and people cheer for a pageant title holder the way others may cheer for their favorite NFL team. For many title holders, especially like Chesley, when you step out to represent your state and you are now competing with 50 other women for the national title, people in the pageant world want their state to do well. And so they trash talk the other title holders. Chesley was proud of her physique, just as an example. And she had an amazing body that was sculpted from years of being an athlete. However, after she won, because her physique was not conventional in pageantry, she was bombarded with negative comments. And of course, she knew that her physique was solid, but when someone would attack an area for her where there was a high level of insecurity, it would impact her. And she can talk her way through it. Many times she did, but there's still a piece of that that you hang on to, wondering if they have seen through your insecurity or your facade of imposter syndrome. So I think I would be remiss if I said no, it had no impact on her mental health. I think she learned how to reduce the sound so that it wasn't so loud. But I do think on some levels, yes, some of that broke through. One thing that is tricky about persistent depressive disorder is that you think it's not that bad. It's not that bad. I can cope with this. This isn't the worst. The problem with having that always as a soundtrack in the back of your mind and having that persistent sadness and loneliness and hopelessness is you are in the battle every day. And to use her words, it followed her everywhere. It didn't mean that she wasn't accomplishing things. It didn't mean that she didn't have moments of happiness. It means that that feeling of depression did not leave her. The challenge with that persistent depression is that the low moments are going to hit you really hard and you go very low. And I don't know that there was a specific moment when I first recognized it, because Chesley was Chesley. She was always a high achiever. She was always pushing herself. So even in those moments when she was likely battling an episode, she would dismiss it as, I was just really tired. And that's why we saw this light dimming in her. It was not until she was in law school, not long before she had her first attempt, that I encountered her and questioned, is everything okay? And she again just dismissed it with, I'm studying, I've got these papers due. And that's why she was in this, what outwardly appeared to be depression. And it was after that she had her suicide attempt. And I began talking with the psychiatrist and the physicians. And that was when I first heard this diagnosis of depression and anxiety. One thing that I do caution people when we're talking about Chesley and what didn't work is the victory that she had every single day that she was here. She fought and did the things that were expected of her. But there's something about persistent depression. And when you hit those moments that it seems bleak, you have to have the tools and the strength to keep on fighting. This was not a spontaneous decision. This was a woman who grew tired of fighting every single day. And Chesley made it clear in her words that depression was going to win this round. One thing I share with many people, and I think for those who are battling a mental illness, what you see on the outside does not always match what's going on the inside. And the more we begin to accept that about people who are battling a mental illness, the less we'll ask those questions and the more we will extend grace and kindness, because they are battling something, even when they're not talking with us. In those moments when they are alone in the quiet, they are still going through a battle. And that is not a battle that beauty, accomplishments, education, friendships, a job, a life that people would envy is not going to take away that voice. It is not going to take away that illness, you can have it all. Both things can be true. You can have it all and still be battling a mental illness. And if the cure for mental illness was to acquire things and acquire knowledge, then people of a certain status and stature in life would never be involved in this battle. And so it's not just Chesley, but there are many people who have battled, who have proven that all of these markers that we use as success and happiness does not affect a mental illness. That is a whole different struggle. And you have to be willing to seek the help and seek the support and to every day make that commitment to fight another day for your life, for your health. There's a number of things that I would say to other moms and dads, and it's the words that I've shared with many parents who have approached me. There's a fear that we have as parents when you love your child. The last thing in this world you ever want is to lose them to any death, be it suicide or a terminal illness. It's just not what we are, when we become parents, it's not something that we build into the parent part of our psyche. I could lose my child. And that is why I put in that book that you cannot allow that fear of losing them to stop you from loving them every single day. Secondly, as a parent, there may be things going on with your child and you are not sure, but something about your mommy sense or your daddy sense or your parent sense says something's going on, and it will automatically cause fear and anxiety. Knowledge is power. And, I'm a NAMI ambassador, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they have put out so much valuable information for parents to look at, to give them signs. Look for these things in your child. They also outline mental illnesses that go beyond anxiety and depression, which are the two most common. So if your child is dealing with an eating disorder, PTSD, OCD, bipolar, schizophrenia, what does that look like? And I love that they provide that kind of information. And more importantly, they offer NAMI basics for parents who have children who may be dealing with a mental health issue or challenge or crisis, to give them some tools and equip them. Those are the things that parents can do. But you can't stop your child from developing or being born with a mental illness. You can't love it out of them. Unfortunately, as parents, at some point, we have to accept that there's a script going on in their head. And unfortunately, we don't get to dictate what is on the script that they tell themselves. I do think that it's important for parents to mirror good mental health behavior. And so I do that even now with my children, 3 of whom live with me. When they ask me how I'm doing, I am completely honest. Interestingly, when we got Chesley's things here, there were simple things like her hairbrushes and her robe. And I remember my son bringing me the hairbrushes. He was cleaning out that box. And the minute he brought it to me, it smelled like her. And I just fell apart because I missed her so much. And I've learned, as I said in that book, to feel what I feel. There was a time in my life when if that level of pain struck me, I would immediately busy myself with something and try to process and think through it. And now I've learned to just stop and feel it. In full transparency, I cry on average at least once a day. Once a day, a memory hits me, or I'll be in the grocery store and a song will play over the speakers in the store and remind me of her, take me back to a moment, and I'll just cry. I'm sure people are walking by me thinking, the sales price is really good. I don't know why she's crying over there in the Doritos. But just little things will just hit me, and I make space for that. It is painful. I would say for people who read this book, that they don't feel alone. There are many people, I'm sure, who will read this book and identify with Chesley. And my hope is if that is them, if they also have some of those intrusive thoughts or feeling of being not enough, that it will compel them to get help, which is why it was so important to put that list of resources in the back of the book. Resources that include organizations and podcasts and books. However you receive data, it's there. So my hope is that if they identify themselves in this book, that they will seek help. And lastly, I hope that this book opens up conversations, real, transparent conversations in homes, in groups, amongst friends about mental health.